All right. How's it going? We're right at the end of the day. Buckle up. I'm Philip. Good to meet everybody. And this talk is called Beyond the Shopping Cart. It used to be called The Shopping Cart is Dead. Magento doesn't like that too much, so we changed that. I work for a company called Something Digital, and we have office right here in Midtown Manhattan, also on Palm Beach, where I live, which is pretty cool, and Palm Beach, Florida, not California, but we do have an office also in Seattle, and we are hiring all across the board for anything that you may want to do. Just tell me what you want to do and we'll hire you. How's that? We run a podcast called Merchant to Merchant where we talk about these types of topics, about the kind of struggles with kind of the forecasting and you know, prognosticating about what might be your next step if you're a merchant looking to put investment into a particular technology or expand your business into a particular area. And we found that when people listen to me talk, sometimes there's a sort of an innate distrust that because we're in client services and because we sell the work that we're proposing that you do, that there's an inherent bias that we have. So rather, we get a bunch of merchants together to sit around and talk and let some really cool conversation happen. And I feel like merchants learn when they hear other merchants speak. So we'd love for you to check that out. That's on iTunes, called Merchant to Merchant. Check it out. We also talk a lot about the same topics that I'm going to talk about here on another podcast that I run with a guy named Brian Lang, super smart dude, on a podcast called Future Commerce. And this is a kind of a great way for you to immerse yourself in some of these thoughts. All right, so let's get into it a little bit. We're going to talk a lot about like some of the future of what digital commerce is going to be like. But what this talk is not about, it's not about virtual reality headsets on everybody. It's not about shopping through augmented reality and some of these other contexts. This is more about what the next wave of e-commerce or what a paradigm shift would look like in the next 15 to 20 years. And we'll talk about a couple very specific ones, something we're calling passive commerce, something that's kind of right upon us right now, but I think is landmark, and we're going to dig into it a little bit, called conversational commerce. Ambient commerce, which is commerce that's sort of on autopilot and all around us all the time, and on-demand commerce we'll touch on there at the end. But to get into all that, I have to give you a reason why I believe that we're at a tipping point or an inflection point in the way that we engage in commerce. And it all starts with computing. You see, we've spent the last 35 years in this personal computing revolution where we have desktop computers in every home and in every workstation. Every business is powered and run by a computer. In fact, we all have supercomputers in our pockets right now. And we've spent those 35 years equating to everything in a digital space in the digital world with a real-world metaphor attached to it. And that means that when we talk about the way that we group things together, we talk about them in terms of folders. And when we talk about those things that are inside folders, we call them files. And when we get rid of those things, we put them in a trash can. The desktop computer is a metaphor for the way that we used to engage in business in real life. So everything that you did in the digital space through the window of your computer was an analog. It was to replicate what we dealt with in real life prior to that. The fact is today that we have a generation that we're calling digital natives that never had any interaction with that analog world. They never used a Rolodex. They never had a planning calendar that takes up the whole space of your desktop. And so the way that we interact with and the way that we discuss these topics needs to fundamentally change. So the desktop metaphor was invented for us to help grasp these higher order concepts because they were familiar to us. And this is what life looked like right at the beginning. In fact, this is what most computing might look like for you today. Today, when you're working on your desktop, if you're like me, it's extremely cluttered and has like a million things all over it. I don't know if I can show. Oh, you're not going to see. Yeah, that's what my desktop looks like. It's totally clean. There's nothing on it. Our desktops really are gathering places for work that's in progress. Anything that's not sitting on top of our desktop is out of sight and it's out of mind. But the fact is that really that's not what computing looks like anymore. In fact, we've evolved because this is what computing looks like now, or this is what computing looked like 12 months ago when I took the screen grab. There is no file and there's no folder. In fact, an app is something that's sort of between a program and sort of between a website and sort of, it is its own thing, and we've come to describe everything sort of amorphously as an app now. In fact, I couldn't tell you which of these tiles is an app or which is a website. They've all kind of begun to blend together a little bit. And the fact is that we are instinctively moving away from the real world metaphors. And why is that? Why would we do that? It's because the desktop is holding us back. Because we were not designed to just work on and think about just one thing at a time. We are complex beings capable of incredible intelligence and thought and high order concepts, and we could do more than one thing at one time. I can't do more than one thing at one time, but most people can do more than one thing at one time. So the desktop metaphor is actually holding us back. It helped us grasp the concept, but now we are actually natively, we're evolving and we're moving away from it. And without that desktop, those old metaphors begin to break down. So we see things like this. There was sort of a fake news, The Onion. Anybody read The Onion? So The Onion had a satirical blog that went out 4 or 5 months ago that had a floppy disk on it, and they sort of satirically said that when the slider of the floppy disk is open, it meant that you could write onto that floppy disk. And when it was closed, it meant it was read-only. The fact that people could believe that just tells you that you weren't around for when it was here, because that's not how it works. In fact, if you were to ask most people under the age of 30, they would tell you this is a save icon. They wouldn't say it's a floppy disk. They wouldn't say it was a means of storage or magnetic storage. They don't even know what it is. It has transcended what it used to be, and it's become something else. This, on the left, is the best-selling trash can on Amazon.com in 2017. The thing on the right is what everybody calls a trash can. Trash cans don't look like trash cans anymore. We understand that they have the same purpose and the same utility, but the fact is that we're evolving to call many things that hold all kinds of waste a trash can. I've created 3 podcasts that are basically trash cans that hold all kinds of things that come out of my mind that is effectively waste. So what are we going to? The world that we used to live in, where we had to relate to concepts through these real-world metaphors, no longer exist. So I'm going to get you there in just a second of why this applies to a shopping cart. This is the world we live in now, okay? The world we live in now is, instead of us conveying meaning through one particular interaction that we have in the real world, we're now creating different levels of meaning by trying to apply the principles that we've learned through 100 years of good design, of trying to relate to people in the way that they might visually, that would, a visual recognition that would transcend language, that would transcend any sort of utility, and would even transcend time. Hello. Transcend time. It's not dependent or locked into any particular decade. A circular repeating arrow has a very different connotation today for us, but I believe that it helps us understand something more complex in the future. So this is what's happened. Everything that we know in the real world has actually been condensed down into a single device. And we're battling to sort of compete with this, because the notion is that as progress kind of, the pace of progress picks up, we're wanting to apply the same sort of experience that we've had of the adoption of technology in every area. In fact, if you're a merchant in this room, you probably have your customers putting all kinds of pressure on you based on the kind of experiences they have with Amazon. Anybody in this room? Nobody. Nobody has that pressure. Can I come work for you? That kind of pressure is not because you're competing with Amazon, you're competing with people's expectations. Okay, so we're starting to consolidate all of these things. This is, I love this, because this is a wonderful ad. This is from, I believe, 1987 or 1988, Radio Shack ad. Radio Shack, for those of you of a certain age, was a company that no longer exists. If it does, it's probably just selling Sprint phones. They basically sold everything from radios to computers later on, and they were sort of a general electronics store. This was a President's Day sale flyer that came around, I believe, in 1988. And this is the top half of the page, where we have a stereo, a radio, some phone stuff. We've got a calculator. We've got a CD player, a computer, a walkie-talkie, and some speakers. And you know what's incredible about this flyer is literally every single one of these things in this flyer now is on your phone. Every one of them. In fact, if you've been to a movie theater recently, you'll know that the boombox is also on the phone because somebody behind you is listening to music before that movie starts, out loud. Anybody in the subway? That never happens. So this is where we are. This is where computing is taking us. And I believe that we're about to apply the same sort of evolutionary shift into the realm of the shopping cart. So let's talk about how the shopping cart came around. If you get really technical about it, the first e-commerce transaction that ever took place was in 1965. It was a sort of a teletype, Morse code, pulse dialing. Does anyone remember pulse dialing on telephones? Before touch-tone dialing was a revolution. Pulse dialing was sort of impulse waves that would be sent from one device and interpreted by another, and someone got really smart and created a catalog ordering system that could use a teletype it's the first, it was when EDI was created and never, ever, ever updated. That's EDI. That's basically EDI. If you ever need to explain EDI, that's what EDI is. And so the birth of the shopping cart really you could say it was way back in 1965, but in reality, it kind of came at the perfect time because the World Wide Web was just taking hold. This is post-bulletin board service days or dial-up days where you would have to I would have to hang up my phone call with my girlfriend so that my sister could get online and send some email. And that was a thing that we did. And the World Wide Web was right at the moment when everyone was always connected. And it was right at the moment when the Clinton administration passed very important legislation that was tied to NAFTA that allowed for private companies to be able to use strong cryptography. So now we have the security aspect. It was also right at the moment, in at least North America, that debit cards were starting to make their way into every single person's pocket, and most of them had Visa logos. So it was this perfect environment. It was a perfect storm that allowed this new technology to take hold. And this new technology, we envisioned when shopping online we envisioned it in the same way that we envisioned shopping back then. This particular slide shows you how the evolution of iOS over time, and this is even a few versions old now, went from those sort of bubbly graphics that even sort of replicated. If you look at the YouTube icon, is an old television. It is a dial-turn television. That is how and it's only 10 years ago, that's how we felt like was the best graphical representation of what television on the web might look like. And as we've evolved, we realized that we don't need to hold on to those old metaphors anymore. And so the death of the shopping cart really comes at a time where we're trying to fight outside of the bounds of what shopping online really means anymore. We don't need to put items into a virtual basket and carry it around a virtual store and have it follow us. We don't need to go down categorized aisles of product. We don't need to. In fact, we don't need to take it to a checkout and pay in one particular part of our store that is sectioned off from the whole rest of the store. Why? Why in 2017 do we need those things? They helped us grok the concept, but they're holding us back. So the death of the shopping cart comes when customers are asking this of us. They want commerce on demand. They want it to be real time. They want it to be wherever they are. That shopping doesn't have to be just a destination that you go to, but shopping is at every destination that you go to. And they want it, to some degree, to be automated. They don't want to deal with the hard parts. They don't want to deal with having what I call Groundhog Day, which is having to sign up and re-register and put your credit card number into every bloody website that you go to. What they want is they want to interact with you in the same way that they interact with every other part of their life. Instant and on demand and right at their fingertips. And another thing that's holding us back in the shopping cart metaphor is the thing that has propped up all of retail for the past 15 years, which is the impulse buy. And having the ability for us to offer additional items that weren't in consideration, not through regions or sections that we lease out on our pages that are effectively just recommendations, but actual last-minute, last-second thoughts, afterthoughts, maybe after the purchase. But we have these abilities. We have the desire there. There's the desire from the consumer to interact with our websites the way they do in the real world, but the technology and the metaphor holds us back. The other thing that you'll never need a shopping cart for is a single item transaction. Anyone ever shop on iTunes? You ever buy a 99-cent song? Do they still do that? 99-cent song. Is iTunes still existing? Is that a thing? iTunes actually was the one who popularized the one-click experience for checkout. iTunes licensed the technology from Amazon about 15 years ago to be part of the debut of the iPod. So a music playing device naturally should have a marketplace that feeds the content into the device, but nobody really nobody had to go in and purchase a song a la carte and build up a shopping cart of many songs from many albums. What they really wanted was, I want this album one click. I want this song one click. That's all they really wanted. And so the one click phenomena was spread and popularized by iTunes, and then obviously Amazon owned the patent. That patent's now expired. But single item transactions are a thing that is here today. It's not the future. It's a thing that we have the ability to do here today, and it's coming to all of our platforms shortly. Another thing that you will never need a shopping cart for really is single purchase downloadables. Anything that's an ephemeral good that doesn't have a tangible real world presence. So a downloadable item could be done outside and delivered outside the context of a shopping cart. So let's talk a little bit about what the future looks like. We're going to talk about passive commerce, which is effectively sort of commerce everywhere. But it's not really that commerce is everywhere. It's not in the sense that I can just pull out my phone and buy something. This really relates at the very extreme ends of the spectrum. This applies to CPG products like consumer goods that you might already have some brand affinity to, like Lucky Charms or a cereal. And right when you're at the moment of purchase, right when you're at the point of being able to buy that item, being presented an offer to buy something similar that you weren't expecting, apparently, according to a Viant research study, has an incredibly high return rate of success for merchants. At the way other end of the spectrum is very long considered purchase time products, things that you invest a lot of amount of time and effort and energy into researching that have very high ticket prices. I'm talking things everywhere from canoes and mountain bikes to cars. Things that have high product consideration purchase cycles. Those also lend themselves very well to passive commerce. So what is passive commerce? See, there's a difference between generating intent and me getting you excited about a product and me harvesting the intent. Me getting you so excited that you're actually ready to purchase. And Jason L. Baptiste, who we had on our Future Commerce podcast, is a serial entrepreneur, not serial like Chex Mix cereal, but like he starts businesses over and over again, that kind of serial. He invented this term, and he says that passive commerce exists at the space in between intent generation and intent harvesting. So you know that you want the product, but you have no immediacy to buy now. And passive commerce accelerates that step to intent harvesting. A good example that's now dead, rest in peace, is buying on Pinterest. This is a good example of an intersection of social commerce, having social proof and having your social network be able to influence the kinds of purchases you make, but also to be able to purchase it outside the context of just a branded portal that you would go to. So instead of me having to go to the Cole Haan site to buy Cole Haan shoes, and instead of me having to go to Amazon to buy Cole Haan shoes, I can just, at some point, I will decide I want them, and it just was already there. It's living in the sidebar of a site that I frequent. It is pushed to me as a text message right about the time, and in perfect time for me to have just received my paycheck. And it is perfectly timed for when I'm ready to make that decision, and it's optimally timed based on my past behavior with the brand. Another example would be having lookalike audiences on Facebook where we start to use the purchase cycle and replenishment cycle to predict when they might need a new product. This works very well for consumer goods. So anything in the CPG category that's consumable, you could potentially think to yourself, if you're Campbell's Soup, how do I get you away from Progresso? I need to begin to understand your consumption cycle and push an ad to you to win your business right at the moment that you're ready to purchase it. So that is passive commerce. And that doesn't need a shopping cart. Ambient commerce. So this is sort of built-in replenishment models. And again, it works very well for consumptive products. Whirlpool has just released a new washing machine. God bless washing machines. So glad they exist. They have an inherent need. You cannot operate a washing machine, it is ill-advised to operate a washing machine without soap to put into the washing machine. And Whirlpool has this great idea. What if we build the actual soap instead of having to create soap or buy soap separately and put it in one dose at a time into the washing machine? What if we actually just allow you to fill a reservoir and we'll dispense it at need? The problem is that when you are at the moment of needing more soap, you may not know that you're out of soap because either you're not trained as a consumer to look on the shelf to see if the product's there, or you have to now interact more with your washing machine than you want to, okay? So now I have to keep an eye on my washing machine to see if it's running low, and I already have that problem with gas. So I don't need that problem with detergent. What Whirlpool has done is they've actually incorporated a washing machine that actually understands and begins to interpret your consumption cycle. So it can push alerts to you to all the places that you need them if you choose to have to be the one in control of the purchase cycle. But the best thing, and this is true ambient commerce, is just let it go on autopilot. Let them understand when I need it. Let them ship it to me so it arrives the day that I run out. Another company that's doing this really well is Nespresso. I always forget the name of these machines. So Nespresso has a very similar interesting model with their coffee pods. Their coffee pods, this is a very interesting business because they actually didn't even want to be tethered to your home Wi-Fi. So they actually have a SIM card that goes into the Xenius Nespresso machine. And tests in the market show that coffee pod purchasers do not have a very predictable purchase cycle. They don't run through the pods linearly. They don't use them every day. They use them most of the time. That means they might grab a coffee on the way to work, and it would displace their usage of the pod today. So a typical 28-day or 30-day replenishment cycle that would just be on auto ship may not actually fit every customer. So having an integrated replenishment system and a means of transmitting the usage that you as a consumer are using built into the product actually makes a whole lot of sense, and that is ambient commerce. One that I like to talk a lot about is something called conversational commerce. And this is sort of, this was the thing in 2016 that everybody said was going to change the world, and then it went nowhere. This is the idea that you could have a contextual conversation online, and it doesn't have to be necessarily on a chat app or on Facebook, but you are having a conversation where we can pull data points out of the conversation and data mine the history across all of our customers and potentially across all of our catalog to be able to make product recommendations to you. And the best in breed sort of experience is the one that you just saw there that for whatever reason never just starts right back over. That would be wonderful if it did. Where we can actually have a conversation that's meaningful. The fact is that not everybody types like this. My wife, Ray-Bans, Clubmaster style black, under $150. Wouldn't it be nice if people just told you every single thing that they wanted all in one shot? They don't. People don't shop like that. Conversational commerce actually needs some training, both at the consumer level and for merchants to be able to interact with it. Also, technology needs to catch up a little bit. We have the means of chatting. We don't always have the means of fulfilling. And it's not going to always be on autopilot. Here's another sort of great example. What conversational commerce is going to allow us to do is to bridge into a new gap of the type of purchase decision that really has only ever existed in real life. Have you ever tried to decide on what karaoke club to go to? I'm the only one. Have you ever tried to group order lunch at work? That's a better example. So there are group purchase decisions or group decision making that have commerce impacts that really have only ever been able to be replicated in real life, mostly for adoption or lack of adoption of the platform that people live on, but also because most of those do take place in contexts where you are with a group of other people. And most of the time that's at work. Taco Bell just released something called the Taco Bot for Slack, and that's when you as a group of people collectively all want to have diarrhea right after lunch. You can all purchase a whole mess of tacos together, and for whatever reason why you would do that. But Jimmy John's is following suit as well, and do you guys have Jimmy John's up here in the Northeast? No? Subs? I don't know. But there's all kinds of the types of commerce decisions that we would make as a group that actually allow us to make them now and actually tread into new territory, like sharing the liability of the purchase. Instead of me having to know to pay Max back next week, or me getting, I can now actually physically share that, and I can share that purchase. I can do something like Venmo. PayPal is here, and they own Venmo, so that's perfect. That's a great tie-in, paypal.com. So Venmo allows you, it's an app for, I can split up a purchase and share it with my friends. What I really love about conversational is it gets us out of this modality of thinking only about the web. And it gets us out of the modality of thinking of it only as social media. DrinkEasy is a startup that actually provides suggestions to those of us that have need to have the kind of liquor delivery service that only functional alcoholics need, but also with a high price point, and I need a concierge type service along with it. It's a very niche audience. But the fact is that DrinkEasy wanted to be different. They didn't want to just have another catalog site with all of the same shots of their Glenlivet bottle that everybody else has on the entire internet. What they wanted was a true concierge service where I have a relationship with a person. The fact is that only about 40% of the interactions that take place on DrinkEasy are with a real person. It feels real because they've trained it to behave in a very real way. It does not take place online. It is not on the web. It is over text message only. And this store is effectively sharing catalog pieces and queries one search at a time, one-to-one via text message. If you look at what the rest of the emerging world does with their phones over chat, the North American market is so far behind. Everything from paying your rent to hailing a cab can be done in Asian markets over WeChat, and most of them, even sending money, can be done over text message. So we're catching up here, and I really do feel like it's still an emerging trend and one that we need to pay close attention to. And the last one sort of is an intersection of all of the above. It's true on-demand commerce. Anyone ever see these buttons? Have you ever had these creepy buttons? You ever see them? They're probably, it's really interesting because The button was released on April Fool's Day 3 years ago as a joke, which was sort of a trial balloon to see if people would actually like it or not. But the Amazon Dash button proved so successful that brands, again, such as Whirlpool and Brita and some Samsung printers have actually built them directly into their products. In fact, Amazon just put it into its app that we would have virtual buttons for any product on their Amazon Marketplace store. What's really great about the virtual buttons is that it allows businesses that have high consumption cycles to also get the same type of benefit of the on-demand interaction. What is really intriguing about this is that this applies itself really well to learning the consumption cycles of a consumer who just uses at a different rate. I don't wash my clothes as often as you do. I probably should, but I don't. But I also don't use toilet paper at the same rate as anybody else. I'm just different, okay? I don't know why I used those two examples, but the fact is that every single person is different. And so a cookie-cutter subscribe and save program that only repeats every 14, 60, 90 days is not meant for everybody. And this gets us one step closer. So having an on-demand presence for me to get my Meow Mix when I need it, and just being able to press a button, allows companies like Amazon, who we seem to trust with a lot of data, to begin to learn more about us and to be able to make more accurate predictions about us. That is true personalization. It's not changing text on a website. It's actually selling one-to-one with a customer and learning how they want to interact with you. And in fact, the button actually proves to be a little too hard. People don't want to press the button. When you press the button, you have to then go into the app and approve that you press the button. Who wants that? And so voice commerce is an emerging technology for on-demand as well. And Amazon, being a sort of a 20-month lead in the market here, was a pioneer. But we're seeing partnerships all across the board. Just last week alone, Google Home devices partnered with Target and Walmart to be able to deliver products from those stores and their marketplaces to any Google subscriber. And so this is actually becoming ubiquitous. Alexa technology is built into 15 models of cars in 2017 and going forward. So we're only going to see more interaction with voice going forward. Siri now has an open API for developers. Bixby is a thing that Samsung created that nobody uses. They're everywhere, and everybody is going to learn to trust more of this on-demand, need-it-now sort of data, and it is personally identifiable information. It's the kind of thing that we're becoming more accustomed to. And sort of wrap up, hey, look, what's in the very, very far future is probably true on-demand, which is the patented fulfillment by Amazon. We're going to make it on the truck as it comes to you, just-in-time delivery. And it's something I call last-mile manufacturing. This is a thing that exists in other industries, in particular revolutions in old-world manufacturing, and especially in the auto dealer business, without the need to be able to actually carry inventory. If you ever bought tires come from somewhere, but they don't come from the store that you bought them from. This is the kind of thing that Amazon's popularized, and its delivery network would allow it to do it. Will we see, printed clothes on demand on the truck on the way to your house? I mean, we'll probably not. It's just going to be a long way away. But these are the types of companies that are actually paving the road to the future. So to wrap up, because I'm over time, passive commerce, it's being right there at the point of purchase decision. Conversational commerce, that is the customer being able to tell me specifically what they need in pretty much any context that they could tell it to me, and me being able to fulfill on it. Ambient commerce, that's me predicting usage cycles and consumption cycles, and me being able to have sort of a seamless and kind of that blurring the line between Erie and the on-demand. And then also on-demand commerce, and that's the customer being able to train me how to interact with them. So to recap, so our old paradigms are dead. Oh, this one. Guess what? You don't need a shopping cart for any of these. So the old paradigms are dying, or they're dead. And what is going to make things like Magento successful in the future? Magento we cannot say in 2017 is a shopping cart. Magento is so much more than a shopping cart now. That's the good news. Magento is a suite of solutions for businesses of every size. Some of that is a shopping cart. It doesn't have to be. As we go forward, we're going to see all kinds of interesting and creative, and you've heard about it here today. There's all kinds of new opportunities for us to use Magento to power the experiences of tomorrow. It's up to us to be able to use our judgment and to listen to our customers to figure out what exactly they need so that we can provide commerce everywhere. And finally, shopping really is no longer a destination. It's at every destination. Thank you.